everyone, and a warm welcome to today's Elsner Academy webinar. It's 10 a.m. here in Germany now, and we're gonna get right into today's webinar. So today's webinar is about our Windancer KNX. So it's a very brief product presentation, so we won't go too much into detail about those products. So today's webinar will take place live. So I'm here for you and you can ask me all the questions that come up during the presentation. My name is Bastian Elsner and I'm managing partner at Elsner Elektronik. My core responsibilities lie around everything that goes externally. So marketing, sales, product development, production, purchasing, logistics, and also the customer service if some problems arise with our devices. Okay, for the introduction, we have prepared a little video I will play for you now. Wonderful. So today's agenda, we will start with a little overview of who Elsner Elektronik is and what exactly we are doing. We will talk a little bit about the weather stations that we manufactured in the past and currently have in our portfolio. In particular, I would like to discuss today our Windancer, which is one of our newest KNX weather stations. I would like to explain how the device is mounted and how you can connect it, which accessories are included and which you might need to purchase extra. We will also have a brief insight into the KNX application and the most important parameters. In the end, I will give a couple of application examples for the weather station Windancer KNX, and in the end we have some time to answer some open questions. As mentioned earlier, we are live today, so feel free to just shoot a message into the chat. I have a colleague next to me who will inform me if there's some questions there. We will make a quick break and answer them accordingly. Let's get into it. So here's some important information about Elsner Elektronik. So Elsner has extensive expertise in home and building automation, and we have our specialization in weather station and sensor technologies. We're doing this roundabout for 35 years already, and we are a manufacturer and developer of products and solutions. We're not only doing this in KNX, but also on Modbus, RS485, DALI, Matter, and also BugNet, which has not been mentioned here. We manufacture all our devices in our headquarters in the southern part of Germany, very close to Stuttgart, and we are 100% family run and 100% in family ownership. Let's get into the overview of our different weather station modules. We start big with the first one. So from high performance to simple and efficient, we have most of the sensors in our portfolio. Let's start off with the Suntracer KNX Pro. It makes use of ultrasonic technology to measure the wind speed, and it can automate up to 12 facades. The Windancer, which today's webinar is about, has a mechanical wind sensor and an optional GPS module that is integrated into the device. There are conventional applications, and the power supply is via the KNX bus possible. Next up, the Suntracer KNX SL Lite and Basic. They have a very broad spectrum of sensors. They are having the Elektronik wind measurement. They are quite design oriented to look invisible on the facade. Next up, we also have the P04 KNX GPS. This is a pure measurement sensor without any automation and logic for further processing in visualizations, BMS, external logics, or if you, for example, if you want to put the shading logic into the actuator and not into the weather station. Let's have a closer look at our Windancer KNX. The Windancer KNX will measure the following physical variables. First up, it will measure the brightness. Also the wind, precipitation, so that's the rain, the temperature, and it has the time reception with the GPS receiver. This only accounts for the model, of course, that has the GPS receiver integrated or not. In the application, we have a logic gate and we have the facade control with the Windancer KNX GPS. For the switching outputs, we have the AND and OR gates with 6 each and 4 individual inputs. With the GPS version, we can control up to 8 facades with sled tracking and shadow edge tracking, weekly calendar, and the yearly timer also. Let's have a look at the installation. So our Windancer can be either mounted on the wall or on a pole. Since it has an adjustable joint, you can do the alignment to the plane depending on how the facade or the place where you would like to mount the Windancer is looking. What's really important is that we have the distance of 60 centimeters below the sensor itself. It's really remarkable how often we get reports about weather stations that are not working. Most cases we receive the weather sensor back and we test it and have to say it has the full functionality. And this often leads to the fact that we need to check how is the mounting of the sensor. You often see there's an AC below the weather sensor, for example, which will create some wind and will make the exact wind measurement very difficult. There are many other cases. For example, if there's a platform below the 60 centimeters and heat is stored there, the temperature measurement is not so good. Hence, we recommend to have them very much exposed and at least 60 centimeters below the sensor. I cannot stress this how important this actually is. The Windancer also comes with the range of mounting accessories that you need, and also of course for the electrical connection. We will need an additional 24-volt DC, or we can leave this out if precipitation detection is not needed. So the 24-volt DC connection is only required if the rain sensor or the need for measuring precipitation is given. Okay, so one very interesting question came up, and the question is, so what is the actual difference between the Windancer GPS version and the version that does not have GPS? So as you might have seen, once you browsed our shop, there's a different pricing for the Windancer GPS and for the Windancer without GPS. So with the GPS version, you have the option that you can also take the position of the sun via GPS into account to control the shading automation. You can do this with the version without the GPS module also, due to the use of the 3 lux sensors that are integrated in the weather station. This requires a little bit more engineering, and you can say it's much quicker to use it with the GPS, plus you have the time signal in the KNX bus also. Thanks for this question. I will move on with the presentation. At Elsner, we try to think about everything to optimize the use of our weather stations and the sensors. That's why we also have the additional brackets, which makes it very easy to take the correct installation into account. For example, we have the arm fix that is powder coated or in bright aluminium. And horizontally, we also have the arm L with a corresponding joint. We also have the fix P for the flash pole mounting. This is all available as accessories for our weather sensors. So the perfect installation of a Windancer could look as followed. You can see the device is very exposed. You have the 60 centimeters below the device, and it will be able to measure very exact in this position. Don't be afraid that it's very much exposed to rain, etc. The device is designed to be exactly like that. Okay, there has been one question about the sensor technology itself. I think it would be good to go back to the overview of our weather stations before we continue with the KNX parameters. So the question was, when would you recommend the mechanical wind measurement, when the ultrasonic wind measurement, and when would you recommend the electronic wind measurement? This is actually a really, really good question. So you have uplifting winds. Those are winds that go pretty much straight up to the facades. You especially have those in cities where many buildings are neighboring each other, and there are some corridors between the buildings. In those corridors, some winds can be created, or they can exist, that are called uplifting winds. Mechanical wind measurement is very good to detect wind that is sort of blowing straight towards the sensor. But if the wind is coming from below, the mechanical wind measurement will have issues to detect this properly. So coming back to the question, I would recommend the mechanical wind sensor if you have to realize automated shading in an object that is not higher than 3 floors. Because there the chance is very unlikely that you have those uplifting winds if you have those in city centers where you have a lot of really high building like G+12, for example. In those cases, I would recommend to use the electronic wind measurement, because the electronic wind measurement does not really care from which direction the wind is coming. So if you have a rule of thumb could be, if you have a very high building where you need different wind sensors on the facade, I can strongly recommend the electronic wind measurement because it's way better at detecting the uplifting winds. And if you have a building that is not as tall, so let me say around about 3 floors, then the mechanical wind measurement definitely will do the job. Now, when is the time for the ultrasonic technology? If you require to know from which direction the wind is coming, and you would like to use an Elsner sensor, then you have to go for the Suntracer KNX Pro. Wind direction measurement is only possible with the ultrasonic technology because we have the wind sensors orientated in different orientations, so we can also tell by 360 degrees from which direction the wind is coming. Thank you very much for this interesting question. I think this is very useful to know when it's recommended to go for which wind measurement method. Thanks for the question very much. Okay, as promised, after the explanation to the different sensor capabilities, we can dive into the KNX parameters of our Windancer KNX. Here we can see the KNX application and the setting of the wind limit values. Here you can see the wind threshold values, and we can also set the threshold value for the hysteresis and the switching output. Here we can see the settings analog to the twilight value. So the threshold value in the hysteresis can be set, and also we can put the settings for the OR switching output. Next up, we have a look at the facade control. We can set the facade control depending to the brightness. Also, we can set, of course, a delay until when shading should be activated. One use case for this is, for example, you have a big cloud moving in front of the sun, and you don't want your blinds to just move because of a cloud. Otherwise, there's the risk that your blinds are just going up and down all day. So if there is a change in the position, for example, the lux value is not bright enough, then it has to be not bright enough for a certain time until an action is triggered. This is really good to reduce some bus load and, of course, to not have the sounds of the sleds moving all day. Also, sled position, of course, can be set, and the movement position according to the controls also. Here we can see the additional functions, for example, the heat protection that can be used and the block and safety that is very important. Do you have any additional questions to the KNX application and to the KNX parameters? Otherwise, we can move on to the application examples. Okay, so I see the measuring technology is still a really, really interesting topic. So a question came up, when do you actually need to use wind direction measurement? There is actually a lot of use cases, but one that I found very, very interesting that I got to learn on a fair a couple months back. So here in South Germany, we have a small, medium city. It's around about 100,000 inhabitants, and they invested a lot in the renovation of the city center, and they built a beautiful fountain, and this fountain is spraying the water up very high. One issue is the water in the fountain is no drinking water, and the neighboring neighbors complained. If the wind is coming from a specific direction, your fountain is spraying non-drinking water on our terrace table. We don't like that. Please turn this fountain off. So the community engaged with a system integrator and asked him to find a solution because they invested quite some money in the fountain, and the majority of the community liked this fountain. But either way, they had to take the remarks of the population serious and take them into account. So what they did, they actually installed a Suntracer KNX Pro And when the wind was coming from one direction where the water was spraying into the garden of this specific neighbor that was complaining about the non-drinking water on his terrace table, then they could just turn off the fountain if the wind was coming from this direction. I thought this was a very, very, very interesting use case on how to use wind direction management. It does not really have anything to do with automatic shading, but the use cases that you can use the weather stations for are, as it seems, only limited by the creativity of the system integrator that is using this device. Okay, I hope that answered the question. If you would like to have more use cases about the wind direction of the SunTracer Pro, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to share some more use cases that I got to know during the past. Okay, if there are no further remarks, we can go ahead to the application examples. Here in the center, we can see our Windancer, which will control our shading actuator that we can currently offer for 24, 230 volt, or also motors with 3 limit switches. 3 limit switches is a specialty for Switzerland and also for Luxembourg. So if you have not heard about those motors, this is a very, very local specialty, I would say. In addition to the 8 facade controls, we would like to also control 8 further facades. And that's why we have integrated one of our newest shading products, which is the BX8 extension, which gives a lot of logic functionality that you can increase the shading capabilities of your system. On our Fapro KNX, which you can also see in the schematic, you can see all the operating statuses, the measured values, and the manual control, of course, is possible there also. All the operating data can be transferred to a higher level automation, for example, to a BACnet system or to another control level. That's about the use case, also with Elsner actuators, Elsner extension modules, and Elsner IP66 room controller. And of course, the star of today's webinar, our Windancer KNX GPS. We are already at the end of today's webinar. It was a very short one because we only talked about mainly our Windancer KNX. We did not went too much into the technical details, and I am very curious, how did you like today's webinar? Have you used our Windancer before? Are you thinking of using our Windancer in future projects? Did we miss some functionality that you really, really require for your products? I would be more than happy to receive all your wishes, suggestions, and the feedback of how you liked today's webinar. We will send a feedback form to all the attendants of today's webinar, and I thank you already in advance for answering that and giving us your feedback of today's session. We are at the end of today's webinar. I will remain in the webinar space for a couple more minutes. If you like to find more webinars and more recordings, you can scan the QR code on the top right. If you like to get some behind the scenes looks of what we're doing here at Elsner, feel free to scan the QR code on the bottom right, which will lead you to my LinkedIn profile, where I will share some insights in how and what we're doing at Elsner Elektronik here in southern Germany. So there has been the question if IP44 for the weather sensor is a mistake. And no, it is not. A weather station has to be specified by IP44. According to the protection IP ratings, you need a hole in the bottom of the weather station because there is constantly condensation happening, and this moisture needs to leave the housing of the weather station. If we're talking about IP6, for example, then the housing is closed entirely and those holes are not there. A weather station will technically not work with IP66 or IP67. So IP44 is the correct protection rating for weather stations. I hope this explanation made sense like that. If not, I'll be more than happy to give a little bit more advanced explanation about this, but it's mainly for technical reasons. Okay, I see no more questions coming up. I thank you very much for the interaction today. I had a lot of fun being your webinar host, and I'm very much looking forward to the next session, and I wish you a wonderful remaining week. Bye bye.